On the flip side, my name is Adam Shawak, your host. Today we're going to be covering ORYX's new record, Lamenting, a Dead World. I've been meaning to cover this band at length for a while now. ORYX is a local Denver band that I have been keeping up with for, a good few years at this point. Their sound has evolved from what I would describe as something close to like sleep worship to some of the most brutal, thoughtful, and compelling blackened death metal that you can currently find. When this new record, Lamenting, a Dead World, was announced, I was extremely excited as their last release, Born into Madness, was released a few years ago, but it was only a 2-song EP. Both songs were around 8 or 9 minutes, and the album before that, Stolen Absolution, was a full-length record, but listening to that material really only put me in a position to want more of their materials. I thought they were doing something that was really fresh. I think the blackened death metal is something that a lot of bands attempts to do and kind of lean too heavily in one way or the other, and a lot of the time they kind of forget that, you're kind of in uncharted territory. There's a lot of stuff that you can do in that genre without having to stick too close to roots, and I think that these guys are blending in some really nice inspiration into their sound. Now, this album is only 5 songs long. We've got side 1 with Contempt, Misery, and Last Breath, and side 2 is Lamenting, a Dead World, and Oblivion. Since this is a relatively short record, I'm just gonna, listen to the whole album and then come back to you after that, rather than splitting this up into 2 sides, just because of the shorter track listing here. But without further ado, here's ORYX's Lamenting, a Dead World. Alrighty, we are back. We have track 1 with Contempt. The slow, brutal formula that ORYX started following over the past few releases is really dialed up for this album. This first track delves further into a perfect expression of torture in audio format. ORYX's personal brand of blackened death metal, to me, toes that line very, very carefully, all the while blending elements of other extreme music into their sound. This track and much of the album here is a blend of kind of sludge metal into their arsenal for a really visceral listening experience. Track 2 on the record is Misery, one of my favorite songs here. This track has this slow, wailing, reverbed out guitar intro that provide this really eerie backdrop for one of the best tracks on the entire record. The depth of the mix here really paints a picture of desperation and despair. The vocals on this track really lend themselves more to like a black metal sound than that of like a death metal track, although it's got a bit of that flair in there. One of the things this album does like really expertly is how big it makes every part of the track sound. With that said, this song is absolutely gargantuan. This is a huge, huge sounding track, like pretty much everything else in this album, but this song in particular just kind of takes up like such a broad audio range that it just really pummels you into the ground with how big it sounds. You can also hear like a lot of ideas that ORYX started toying with on their last full-length record, Stolen Absolution, brought out and really matured quite a bit. This is a coming-of-age, I think, record for their sound. Track 3 is Last Breath. This final track for side 1 comes right off the heels of the last track with a very nice, slow, discordant progression of notes that serve to build up this kind of like almost collapse or drop into like a pit of even lower and heavier notes. Last Breath is easily one of the denser tracks here, though this album, like I said, very clearly an exercise in layering huge sounding parts over one another for earth-shattering effect. This song, absolutely no exception. That is side 1. Side 2, we have the title track at track 4 with Lamenting, a Dead World. The title track for this record is composed entirely as an instrumental track, and as a lead-in for the final and the longest cut on the record, Oblivion. This track does an amazing job at building and drawing tension out. The feedback is gratuitous and entirely necessary for transmitting that impending sense of doom. I also do love the choice of making this song the title track, as it subverts expectations really nicely, just seeing as this has no lyrics whatsoever, and this arguably is one of the more stripped down tracks writing wise for like the guitar parts and stuff, but there's like, you can hear some like synth work in the background, definitely toying with a lot of like artificial soundscapes and stuff, and sort of doing a bit of a drone track here to lead into the final track on this album, and I think it's done really expertly. Track 5, the final track on the record, is Oblivion. This monumental, loathsome beast of a track closes off the album with a thesis on just how brilliant these guys are at writing. The track leaves you with a feeling of anxiety and kind of an urge to climb up your walls or maybe like burn your house down or something. The fine line between excess and sheer brutality in sound and scope is crossed here with bludgeoning riffs and drums that are fit for a funeral pyre. While the aggression does pile on here, the writing continues to grow more clever with some of the most hellish guitar soloing that I have ever heard. Not necessarily the most technical, but 100% fitting for this song. Just the absolutely massive length of this song and just how much they do on this song while kind of remaining in their realm of comfort while also kind of you know, hitting like the edges of like their boundaries. I think it's a really, really interesting track in that you can definitely hear the progression of their writing all the way from like the beginning of their career to this point. You know, they are building up something here. This is clearly an evolutionary in between. There is going to be more, and it is going to be way more interesting than this. Not that this isn't interesting, but this is definitely just a step on a developmental road. These guys are maturing very quickly. This album to me is an indicator of that, and it is a great listen. So that's my take on the tracks here. Overall, as a record, this thing is really cohesive. I love the fact that they didn't try to like weigh down the track listing here. Having 5 tracks, I mean, it seems more like a traditional like EP, you know, length, but at the same time, some of these tracks here are breaching 8, 9, 10 minutes long. So this album as a whole really comes together with just how focused it is. I think a lot of the problems with some of their early material, especially off of like their first album, Widowmaker, their second record, Stolen Absolution, you have a lot of these shorter tracks that, while very good in a lot of their own rights, I think that those albums are a lot less focused. But the material on this record, just with how dense it is and how it all has the kind of the same direction, I think it's a very good flowing album. I loved listening to this record. If you would like to listen to this record, it goes up digitally everywhere on the 30th. That would be tomorrow when this video is uploaded. Thank you all so much for watching. When you guys get a chance to listen to this record, leave it in the comments. What did you guys think? I would highly recommend you guys check out this band. They have been one of my favorite local bands to follow over the past few years, and I really, really love what they're doing, and I really would love to support these guys. So if you guys, you know, like want to go out of your way to like pick up a record and, you know, you trust my judgment, pick up this album. It's amazing. Thank you all so much for watching again, and we will see you on the flip side.